Hello and welcome to the Events Podcast, where we talk each week with event professionals about how they plan, promote, and run their events. Whether you're running small meetups or large conferences, exhibitions, and concerts, we focus on finding actionable tips that you can use straight away. The podcast is sponsored by our ticketing system, EventsFrame, and we developed this system after running 300 plus events with my company Apps Events. And we had an endless search for an amazing and cost-effective ticketing and attendee management system. We've tried everything, and we designed EventsFrame to be super easy to use with the best discounting options out there. You can embed tickets in your own site or use our simple event site builder. And new for December, we have email integrations. We have almost every email marketing system out there. So we integrate with Drip, MailChimp, Zapier, MailerLite, Infusionsoft, Aweber, ActiveCampaign, and many more. And if you're a paying customer, we'll even help build an extra integration if you don't see it. If you send me an email at dan@eventsframe.com, dan@eventsframe.com, with the subject line podcast, I'll send you a special discount code. So on to the interview. This week I was delighted to talk to Corbin Ball. Corbin is based in Washington State and the west coast of the US, and is a really fascinating guy. He's had a long career in the events industry, and he's a globally renowned expert on meetings technology. So all the kind of technology, hardware and software that goes into running events. He's a real expert, and he gave us a lot of information about what the trends are and how to use technology to run a great event. He's also a really well-regarded speaker and consultant. So we also talk about how he built his career as a speaker. So this is interesting for anyone who's looking to speak at events. He gets into a lot of information about how he's, puts a lot of information on his website, how he markets himself, and how he always over-delivers to his clients. So it's a fascinating interview, and I think whether you're looking at events technology or whether you're looking to speak at events, there's a lot of interesting information in here. So over to the interview with Corbin. Hello and welcome to the Events Podcast. Today I'm delighted to be talking to Corbin Ball, coming live from Washington. Corbin is a real expert on events technology. We've spoken a couple of times. He speaks at conferences all around the world. I've just been checking out his calendar, and he's pretty in demand across Europe, the US, and elsewhere. So really interesting person to talk to. I want to talk to him about his background, about what he sees as the trends in events technology, and also how to become a speaker, because he's been very successful in his career as a speaker. So I know a lot of people are looking to do more speaking, so it would be great to talk about that. So hello, Corbin. How are you doing?
Hi, Dan. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm doing fine.
Great. Just to set the scene, Corbin, where are you located? I know you're in Washington, but whereabouts are you in Washington?
Actually, I'm in Washington State, and which is most northwestern of the states in the United States, and I'm in the most northwestern tip of that. So the closest city is Vancouver, Washington.
Okay.
Vancouver, Canada.
Yeah, I knew you in Washington. I've been to Seattle quite a bit and further south. I haven't really been much north of Seattle, but I know it's really nice up there.
It's beautiful up here, yes.
Great. So just a bit about your background, Corbin. Tell us a bit, what was your career and how did you get started in events in general?
Well, my past life was as a meeting planner. I was head of conference operation for a high-tech association, and we ran international citywide technology meetings for 18 years. And engineering associations were among the early adopters of technology. I had email in 1988. I helped build one of the first association websites in 1993. At the start of 1993, there were only 130 websites. So it was early in the adoption game with that. Being immersed with, it was an area of the optics, but I was immersed with technology and technology providers, and really could see the impact of how that would affect society. And in 1997, before the dot-com explosion happened, I could see the writing on the walls. I could see that it would change everything, all industries, from farming to pharmacology, but especially events and trade shows. And so at that time, I decided I would give it a try to leave my job at this engineering association and form my own business, speaking, consulting, and writing, focusing specifically on events and trade show technology. So
Great.
I was the first person to do it, and it's been a fun ride since then.
Great. So what type of events were you running? Was it conferences, and kind of how many were you doing when you had the job?
Large, complex. We'd run 15 meetings a year, Uh, Five of them would be 4,000 people and above, and the largest one is about 15,000 people, 2,000 speakers, using some of the largest facilities in the United States and around the world, as we did it international as well. So yeah, lots of heavy duty meeting planning for citywide events oftentimes.
Interesting that just to sort of check on the terminology, because when you say meetings, I mean, are you talking about trade shows? I'm always a bit confused because some people sometimes use the term meetings when they're referring just to like small booking a meeting room at a hotel or whatever, but sometimes it's used in the context of kind of trade shows and things. I'm wondering how you kind of use the word.
I'm using it in the umbrella term. This did include it was a large convention and trade show with that, but it's yeah. So I'm using it in the broad term.
How did you get started as a consultant? I mean, it's all obviously, you know, I kind of did a similar transition, and I was an employee, then I became a freelancer, and then started my own, you know, business. But a lot of people obviously they're quite reluctant to leave a paycheck and security. What did you have like clients lined up, or did you just make the jump and then start trying to get people to work with?
I started out I was quite involved with MPI at the time. I contacted all the chapter presidents that I have this program on technology, which would like for me to come. And so that started it, and then one thing leads to another. And the speaking, consulting, writing is really, they all support each other. It's a kind of a three-legged stool that if you speak a lot, you get consulting jobs. If you write, you get consulting and speaking jobs. And so it all fit together pretty naturally.
Sure. I mean, do most people, I mean, in terms of to make a living, do most people focus on the consulting or on the speaking, or is it like you say, usually a combination?
I think it really varies. The speaking profession there are some people that, you know, they just fully focus on that. Others, I think it varies a lot.
Yeah, well, that's probably a good time to ask you, because I'm curious. You know, I've done a bit of speaking myself, very much, you know. It's not something I've ever promoted, you know. I've been asked through connections to speak at some events, and I obviously run my own events, which I speak at. But I'm curious, for people like who wanting to get into speaking at more events in whatever area of expertise they have, like, what would you say are some good kind of tips in terms of how to get started and how to approach the whole thing?
Well, first of all, you need to come up with a topic that is that people will be willing to pay for. So so you need to have, and that topic needs to burn in your belly. I mean, it's something that you need to be passionate about and hopefully knowledgeable about it as well. Once you've done, and then I think that you define what your niche is. I think that you know, for example, if you're doing something on sales marketing, you know there are tens of thousands of people doing that, and so I think it's important I think it's helpful, at least for me, is to define your niche and focus your audience with that. And so that's what I did. I do speak to groups outside of the events and trade show industries, but it's usually meeting planners that hear me at one of their events, and they say, "Hey, you'd work well for our group as well." I don't actively target outside of that, out of my niche.
Sure. What do you advise for people who are like getting started and they don't have any experience? I mean, do you think it's a good idea just to get whatever exposure you can, go and speak for free at events, go and help out with different things like that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's good. If you're in the events industry, you know, we're really well networked, and there are lots of publications, and so, you know, one way to get started, if you have an inclination to write, is to contact the publishers and say, you know, I've got this article, consider publishing it. You start getting your name out and doing that. And hopefully the trade-off for me, if I actually write for 5 different publications now, but when I was writing them for free, I would trade-off is to be sure to, you know, put my picture and name, contact information, and a little bio about me at the bottom, and so it's just about promoting and getting your name out. And
that's
you know, if you're writing or if you write a book, that's another one. If you you become the de facto expert essentially, and so that's one thing is and networking, getting involved in the trade shows, and you know, we are, you know, actively, for me, I was actively involved in associations, MPI, and then ICA, and National Speakers Association, and you put the networking out, and it's, you know, all that stuff raises your profile, and you really want to become sort of the top of mind presence when you think of a particular subject in a particular niche. And so that's been my strategy.
Great. Interesting you talk about getting articles published. I guess another benefit now is pretty much all of these publications, I imagine, have online presences. So obviously if you set up a good website, you're going to get inbound links from all these. You can make sure they give the link to your website as well. So you'll get some good kind of SEO from that as well.
Absolutely. And that's another thing. I mean, shortly after I went out on my own, about a year after I started my newsletter, which now goes out to about 10,000 people in 70 countries, and it is, and that's been very helpful. That is, that builds a website, and so it's content on the website. And my philosophy is essentially, I got into it. I started this second profession as a speaker and writer and consultant in a way because I wanted to give back to the industry. It was important for me, and so my philosophy has been, you reap what you sow. If you give out, it comes back to you. And definitely. If you go to my website, there are hundreds of free articles and tons of tools out there, and it's really to help the industry, and that comes back. It's come back, in full throat back to me, and so it's been fun. It's been a fun ride.
That's a great idea. I'm actually just subscribing to your newsletter as we speak. Yeah, it's interesting. That's definitely my philosophy. I mean, that's why I do this podcast. I mean, this podcast is great because I get to talk to people like you. So for me, it's great. I get to speak and network with some amazing people. But it's all free content. I mean, you've already said 2 or 3 great things which are going to help people. So it's all free, and it's going to have a knock-on effect. I mean, it already has. I mean, I've already had good connections from it. I think it's a good general thing. Whatever you do, whether you write content, whether you do audio content, whether you make YouTube videos, just give as much as you can away for free. Don't be too precious about, people copying your work and stuff. As long as they give, I don't mind people recopying my stuff as long as they give me credit for it. Give me a note. I'm happy for my stuff to get published anywhere, repurposed.
I totally agree, and you bring up a good point, Dan, is that it doesn't have to be writing. There's, in fact, video is the new language of the web, essentially, and it's people do that, and podcasts, and there are multiple channels that you can get the information out, but you give out and it comes back to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting more fragmented. I mean, obviously Facebook content is a huge now, which can be written all video. I mean, Instagram is getting big more and more. If you look at, the Event Profs hashtag on Instagram, there's tons of people doing stuff there, because obviously the events industry is very visual.
Absolutely.
It's just like, I think the people I've seen being really successful have kind of really dominated 1 or 2 categories, because you can't do everything. It's good to get your content out everywhere, but, you can't do everything. It's just not possible.
Yeah, and it helps the social channels are important, I think, if you are a speaker, or it's important that you are active in the social channels as well.
Yeah, definitely. Do you get the events where you speak, do you get them to give you a copy of the video so you can post it on YouTube, or do they normally want to keep that as kind of proprietary?
I don't recall that happening in the last year, but I have done that in the past, yes.
Great. So when people have started, they've done some events for free, they've written content, they're starting to network. Like, how do you approach it? I mean, do most of your bookings and things come from referrals? You do a great talk, or do you get a percentage through booking agents and things, or is it just a real mixture?
Virtually, I'd say 95% of my bookings are either repeat business or word of mouth that have been referred. I do a little bit with speaker bureaus, but I have such a targeted niche that it's not broadly applicable to many speaker bureaus with that. So you get the information out. My newsletter, I just sent my newsletter out. In fact, it's still cranking out right now. I always get 2 or 3 calls. It goes out every other month, and I always get 2 or 3 calls saying, "Hey, you're on my mind for this and that. And can you do this?" And so it's getting out and getting regular, getting in front of people. One way electronically, through many channels, is the more you get out, I think the more you get responses back.
Definitely. That's an interesting tactic you've got of sending the newsletter every 2 months, because it's kind of counter to what a lot of people are doing now. Everyone's kind of bombarded you with content, and I think there might be some sense in what you're doing in terms of like, it's like I'll see Corbin's email and it's like, I haven't heard from him for a while. It must be it must have really put some thought into this, because a lot of people, you sign up for someone's software or whatever, and they just bombard you, and it's just too much, And I think that you've got a different approach of kind of very sort of long form, just checking out some of your archives, a bit more thoughtful and less often.
Yeah, I think that you definitely can send out too many. There are two reasons for schedule with that. Is just first of all, pretty much I do have a couple of support people part time, but it's pretty much a sole proprietor, and so it's just a matter of allowing the time to each of my newsletters has 2 or 3 articles, links to 2 or 3 articles, and then a lot of other things are involved with it. And so it takes a while to produce it. It is an income stream for me. There are sponsorships with it, and so I just don't want to overload people's inboxes. I think that you can, as long as you kind of keep out there on a semi-regular basis, and then all the publications that I write for as well, that gets my name out, and then active in the social channels and so forth. You don't need to be. My full-time job is not a blogger. My full-time job is doing these other things, but it's a good mixture, a good thing to add on. My newsletter blog as one of my means of getting the information out.
Definitely. What you mentioned the publications. What would you like? How would you rank like the main publications and of kind of, because I'm always checking out new ones. I'm curious what you think are the most kind of useful ones to be reading and maybe writing for.
Well, I write for Meetings Today and also North Star Media, which does successful meetings, and I provide articles for them, and they distribute through their private channels as well. And then I write for Association Meetings International, so CAT publications in London, and then regularly my articles appear in a Polish publication and an Italian publication as well.
Okay.
So those are some of the ones that are at the top of mind, but I think that I look at all of them. I mean, Successful Meetings and Conventions magazine, Convene from PCMA, the Meeting Professional from MPI. There's good content floating around all over the place.
Great.
Event marketing, I think they do a good job of posing it from that part. Hospitality Today from the hotel industry component of it. I track a lot, and then I also track a number of listservs as well. Do
you actually subscribe to the actual physical copies of these magazines? I'm curious. Or do you just pretty much read everything online nowadays?
Pretty much, more and more so online. It's easier, faster. I can get a quick glance of what's happening and on in and what I'm interested in.
Yeah. Great. So just to finish off your kind of speaker tips for aspiring speakers, I mean, I really like your website. How you've got a very good FAQ. This is Corbin Ball, CORBINBALL.com, and what I've noticed, like some speakers are like they're almost a bit too brutal, and you're very casual and friendly. You're very, hey, if I do expenses, it's going to be low, and I'll fly coach, and it's very like engaging and friendly. Because sometimes speakers can put FAQs, and it can be kind of like, I demand this fee, and I have to fly business class, and I have to get this, and you've got a good tone, which I think is good to copy, which is like it's just very helpful, and and I guarantee 100% refund if you're not happy with my session, that's going to give people a lot of confidence.
Yeah, I mean, I think that again, there are a number of routes I could have gone in terms of speaking, and the one I chose, target audience of meeting planners, they are usually getting speakers for free because it's such a good audience, and so it's not if money was driving it, it's nice to make a living with it. But if money's driving it, I probably would have gone other routes. But I feel passionate about the events industry. We bring people together. We make the world a better place, and so I've kind of targeted it in that way. I think one of the key rules of a speaker is don't be a prima donna as well. That you're there to help and support, and I do my best to do that.
Yeah, that is actually almost exactly what I think. I was actually just chatting yesterday to a guy, Chris Robb, ROW, really interesting guy who runs mass participation sporting events. And he has a conference for that niche, and he was saying the same thing about working with speakers. And some people just they get one keynote and they become an instant prima donna, and I've seen that as well in the events I've run, and the people you want to work with are the people who are super helpful, and they turn up and like they see that you're having a problem with registration, they help out with that, they just jump in and do stuff, and people like that, it's like gold dust. You'll work with them any day of the week.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah. What would you see, like jumping back to the sort of the big picture, like in terms of the events industry, like what are before we talk about specifically about technology, like what are the main trends you've seen in terms of the events industry? Obviously, I mean, it seems to me there's more and more events generally, it's more crowded, but what kind of, what trends would you identify as kind of big ones in your career of, I guess, 20 plus years now?
Well, what's happening right now, I think, is one of the key things is the ability for integration. The major players, the major tech companies, the event technology providers are buying it's consolidation, acquisition, consolidation. So you have Cvent, and they just bought Social Tables. You have Eventry, formerly eTouches, that just bought ITM, and they're adding to their portfolios by buying additional companies. And they're working on and then trying to integrate it. And they're working on integration. But the other approach has been these new cloud-based companies that are smaller, that they do a particular component of it. It might be registration, or it might be marketing, or it might be abstract management or logistics. And but they're built from the ground up to be interoperable. They have strong published APIs, application programming interfaces, so they can share data back and forth. And some of them you see, for example, Event Tech Tribe is coming together as a consortium of different companies, but designed to work together. So integration is one of the key things out there. Is the technology is getting to the point that you can share data among different programs or with these large ones as well. And so it's that data is a really important factor. It's the attendee journey. What you can collect on site now is much greater than it ever has been in the past. It's
Sure.
The ability through social media postings and activity on a mobile app and beacon technology, and there's a whole range of really every step of the way can be tracked. If what sessions an attendee is going to, what exhibitors they're visiting, how long they're spending at each of those booths, which is helpful to the attendee. You can get a diary of what's happening, but it also helps and for exhibitors, because if they're really interested. If you stood in your booth for 20 minutes rather than walking by, you're more interested in the product probably. But it's also helpful for the event manager, show organizers, that you can get a really clear picture of what people are interested in, so that you can better provide services on an aggregate level to improve the event, to see what people are interested in, where they're going, but on an individual level to be able to know what that specific interest of those individuals are, and then target the communication better to them regarding what they're interested in. Data collection and analytics are really an important part of that as well. Great. Also, just effective mobile technology, mobile event apps, but a whole range of other technologies that are happening on site that improve the experience, streamline the experience, make it more personalized. And so there are new ideas mushrooming up every day in the events industry, and It's really an interesting time to watch.
It is, yeah. I mean, I know that with our system, we've got a registration system, Events Frame, and actually we've just launched this week. We've got Zapier integration, Salesforce integration, and then email integration with all the email marketing tools like ActiveCampaign and MailChimp and things like that. And,
right.
and we want to start having interview, like exactly what you're saying. You're talking about people having smaller systems that integrate, so we need to have integration with the scheduling applications. There's a bunch of them, Attendify and Shed and all these things, and then all these other ones. And it's I think it's changing from. You've got obviously the all-in-one systems like I guess Bizzaboo and Eventscase. And there's loads, Some of which are great, Cvent. And for some people, they go down that route, and then some people want to just pick a bunch of different things, and just as long as they link together, I think.
That's right. I mean, and before you couldn't do that. I mean, not as easily as it is right now. The cloud-based systems are built at their core to be interoperable and multinational. This stuff is sort of automatic these days, and so it's much easier to do now than it was even 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. So, I mean, we had a talk before, but I'm curious just for the listeners, for someone like myself, for example, someone who's got a startup in the events area, some software or a hardware solution or whatever. What would you say are the good events to be at? You talked a bit about the one in Barcelona this month. What would you say are the good places to go and meet potential people you could work with?
The big trade shows that have emerged are IBTM, that's happening in 2 weeks in Barcelona, IMEX Frankfurt, which is also a very large show, and then IMEX America. Those are ones that are, the center of the world in terms of event planning, are there for the weeks or the 3 or 4 days that those happen. And also, I think in the U.S., the convening leaders from PCMA happens every January. The MPI's annual meeting usually happens in June or July, and IAEE is if you're especially interested, it's trade show exhibition focused. But there's lots of technology there. I try to go to that one, and then also. If you're from an international perspective, it's happening. I didn't make it this year too. For ICA, it's happening right now in Dubai. Has been a very good show.
Which was the one in Dubai? Sorry,
it's ICA, the International Associations of Congresses and Conventions.
Oh, okay, great. That's an interesting one as well. Yeah, there's one. I saw there was one in London this month. I was going to go to it actually. I forgot the name, but I was just too busy.
Event Live, I think.
Event Live, yeah, exactly. That looked quite interesting. Smaller event, but still interesting.
Very technology focused.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think pretty much 100% technology focused. What about Asia? I mean, obviously Asia's booming like crazy for the whole meeting industry. Like, are you involved in any events out there, and do you plan to be in the future?
Yeah, I was just a month and a half ago, 2 months now, in Sarawak, Borneo. So yeah, there's even places such as Borneo. They have a beautiful convention center there, a lot of interest, high quality. It was a high quality event, and I've recently spoken all over Asia as well. Australia has a very active events community. I'll be speaking this afternoon. I'm in a webinar this afternoon. It'll be in the morning for them, for a group in Hong Kong, and simultaneously in Australia as well. So yeah, there's a lot happening in those spaces, and certainly China is the awakening giant. That is, there's a lot of potential for events there. Yeah,
great. Well, I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover. That was super interesting, Corbin, and I want to thank you also for getting up. I know it's like 6:30 in the morning, Washington State's time, so I really appreciate that. Is there anything you'd like to plug? Any websites or links, or where should people go check you out online?
I think you can find all the information at corbinball.com. You can go from there, and there are a ton of free tools and articles. So it's really not meant to be a commercial site except for talking about my speaking services, but it's really the major focus is to provide content.
Great. So I think everyone should check out the website and also subscribe to Corbin's Tech Talk newsletter. So Corbin, thanks again. It was a real pleasure to talk to you, and I look forward to talking again.
Happy to do so, Dan.
Do you want to sell more tickets to your amazing events? EventsFrame event ticketing has been built to minimize the amount of time it takes to buy a ticket. Result? You sell more tickets. Check out eventsframe.com